Hey everybody, this is Nick Baldwin, and today I'm being joined by UFC middleweight Gerald GM3 Meerschaert, who defeated Edmen Shahbazyan via second round submission this past weekend on the main card of UFC Fight Night in Las Vegas. Gerald, how's it going?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's good to talk to you, and congratulations on the big win. We're 4 days out since the fight. How do you feel about how things went over the weekend, and how do you feel about the win?
I feel pretty good, man. It would have been nice to not have gotten dropped and beat up on for a little bit, but hey, that's kind of my brand of fighting at this point. So uh,
You know how to deal with that. You've been there before.
yeah, yeah. Fortunately or unfortunately, it is not the first time. And some guys are real athletes. Some guys got knockout power. Some guys got speed. I'm just a natural born fighter. I can be put in bad positions, and as long as I'm still drawing breath, I got a chance to win.
And we'll talk a lot about sort of the comeback aspect of the fight. But I do want to ask, like, does this win? I mean, you've had a lot in the UFC and MMA at this point. You're a veteran of the sport. Does this win, or did it feel any more special than some of your others? Just a with the comeback and sort of the reaction online, and also, and I know you kind of downplayed this, but beating Anderson Silva's record, which I'm sure you've heard of endlessly over the past 4 days, is a big deal, no matter what you think or say. Um,
Yeah.
does it at all feel more special, or was this to you just another win?
A little bit of both. I mean, it is not lost on me that that's an achievement, especially I beat a record held by one of the greatest to ever do it, one of the greatest ever to do it at any weight, but especially at my weight class that I've competed in my entire UFC career. I also tied Damian Maya for like third for all time submissions. Like obviously I had the
Yeah.
middleweight record because he competed at multiple weight classes, but like now we have the same amount of submissions period. And I was looking at numbers and like I've done that in 21 fights. Him and Jim Miller, they've got like 30, 40 UFC fights. So that's it's a cool thing to think about. It's a cool thing to say. I try not to dwell on it too much, right? Because you don't want to. Yeah, I'm still fighting. I still got stuff to do. And for me, it's more about what's next. But it does make the victory special, and like just the reception I got online. Like you never know how it's gonna look. Like how I know how it felt in there
Yep.
and what I thought it looked like. But sometimes you go back and watch film and it doesn't, what you think happened doesn't translate really. But like, mentally, I felt really good. I was pretty clear. I was aware what I thought happened pretty much did happen. And, I think after taking the body shot in the ground and pound, getting back up, I kept shooting right away. I threw some of my own shots back at him and tried to slug on him a little bit and landed an elbow. So it wasn't like I was just desperation shooting. Like I popped back up and I was ready to fight. And it seemed like people were very, very receptive to that. So to get that kind of acknowledgement from the fans and my peers especially, it was it's a great feeling.
And in the submission department, you actually moved ahead of Hoist Gracie, which that kind of like a nice little resume. More subs than the OG himself.
Yeah, I probably have a lot more UFC fights than he did, but yes,
True, true, true.
that is still cool.
Yes, it is. As far as the fight, and how it was going between rounds one and two. Round one, I think Shahbazyan probably took across the board. I didn't actually look at the scorecards, but I would imagine so.
He did. He did.
Yeah. What was sort of the message in the corner? What do they want you to do differently going into round two?
I mean, that was pretty much what we figured would happen. I was kind of feeling it out. Maybe could have shot a little bit more in the first round, but it was like, I know he generally takes the first round, and if you press too hard or leave an opening, he'll come back and he'll really try to like put it on you. And that's when he's strongest. In his last fight with AJ Dobson, Dobson was actually having a lot of success and was touching him up, but he got a little overzealous in one area or the other. And he just, Edmund started fighting back real hard and ended up catching him. So after the first round, it was, still look for the body kick, maybe like that series, like, instead of trying to go deep and letting him catch it, kick a little bit higher to the shoulder, kind of kick the arm, and like, just start pressuring more, like start getting his face, hang on him, shoot, push him to the cage. So that's why I came out right away and I started shooting right away and like pressing a little bit more. Then obviously I had the body shot happen in the ground and pound, and that was not part of the plan. But once he hit me and I went down, it was kind of one of those reactions that's almost like a cramp, where it's like it doesn't matter if you're awake or like you can try to fight through the pain. There's just certain things that happen, certain, not as often with body shots, but certainly with that one where it was like I'm going down. If he follows me, I just got to weather the storm, and I got to either hopefully he stands up and lets me up so I can recover a little bit, or that in that case, I obviously my face is fine. I blocked just about every one of those shots, and the ref did a great job letting me work and recognizing that I was still moving in the fight. So after he started going to town on me and I felt fine, I was like, oh, this is great. He's going to tire himself out. And that's, pretty much what happened.
Can you describe what, like, for everybody at home who isn't a pro fighter and doesn't take big punches and body shots for a living, like, what did that body shot feel like? What do those kinds of shots feel like? Was it right to your liver?
Yeah. So like that one that he hit, it was like just below my floating rib on my left side. And he had hit a few body shots earlier in the fight and none of them did anything. Like I was fine. Like it's not that he doesn't punch hard. He punches really hard, but I just got a pretty solid core. But that one, it kind of like skimmed the outside, which sounds like, oh, well, wouldn't that hurt less? But it's kind of like if you ever make those rat tails with a towel and you like whip somebody with it. If you're too close, it doesn't do anything, right? But if you get just like the edge of it to snap like that, and that's just how it ended up like skimming off the edge, like it skimmed off the edge with all the power, but just like barely touched the outside. And that, like, it's just like your internal organs catch a cramp and they just seize up. Like just folded in half. And like, I tried to fight it, but it was like, my body was like, nah, man, we're not doing this right now. Like you got me in here to this ridiculousness. Like my liver's about to explode. You're going down to the floor for a little bit. So luckily, it was a mind over matter thing where I was like, all right, even if I go down, I can get a hold of them and, get something going again. But yeah, it's not a fun feeling.
Because I think it was even your friend and former teammate Paul Felder on commentary who said it was either him or Bisping. Either way, one of them said that, once I think it was Edmen was on top of you a little while after the body shot, they were kind of saying, this is like this is better for Gerald. This is where you want to be.
Yeah, that's pretty much. Yeah, well, even Edmen's coach Dewey Cooper in the corner, I could hear him like, make the right decision, stand up, make the right decision.
Yeah.
And I was just in my head, I was like, don't make the right decision, stay down here. So,
and yeah, ultimately it worked out. And as you kind of pointed out, with the ground and pound after the body shot, it seemed like you were blocking most of it in your face. I mean, you're not busted up. Is it fair to say that none of the ground and pound really hurt you per se? It was more just like you couldn't get out of the position right away.
Yeah, I mean, it was more than a tickle, but
Sure,
I think there was one that got through and like hit me square in the forehead, but that did nothing as far as like hurting me or rocking me at all or creating it. Like obviously, he said there's no damage to speak of. He was trying to get the finish, but he was just kind of hitting my arms, and I was moving. When the ref said move, I would either try to regard and push off, like get to a spot where maybe I could push off with the hips. But then he would do a good job like sprawling or moving in a way that like, okay, now I got to come up and like, I went for a low single a couple times, and then he would pancake sprawl real good. And then I was like, all right, now I'm going to go back to my guard. And eventually he just couldn't swing anymore. And I got a hold of his wrist in a 2-on-1. And I just kind of worked back into guard. I kind of let him pass the mount for a split second because I knew I could just pop him right back off. And either it was going to be either I'm getting up, reshooting and get on top, or like he just kind of sat back on me in guard. And I was like, all right, we're fine right here. And I started working some of my Kimura setups. And then eventually he figured out, there was no way that he was going to do anything to me on the ground. And he stood up, and I was like, all right, time to get to work, start shooting, start swinging, and see what we can get going.
With some comeback wins, there's no momentum shift. Like a Czech Congo Pat Barry, I mean, it's one guy beating up on the other, and then all of a sudden, bang, the other guy's out, like just the finish, right? Here, I felt it was a bit different in the sense that there was that shift a little bit for 20 or 30 seconds before you won. You were in the driver's seat all of a sudden. When did you feel that momentum shift, if you agree with that?
Oh, no, I agree with that. I feel like as soon as he started getting tired on top, I was like, man, either I'm going to reverse him, or as soon as I get up, I'm going to be on this dude. And that's exactly, when they said, all right, stand up, I knew he was like probably hoping that because like I almost got finished, I would be tentative and like give him space to work so he could like kind of get his breath back. But I was like, this is the perfect time to jump on him. And it's something everybody says, right? Like if you're down on the scorecards or something like that, or if it's like a close fight, or if like, I just got hurt, I lost the first round, I just got hurt. It's like, hey man, you're going to lose anyway if you don't do something. Like you might as well go for it. And to be able to pull that trigger and just say like, all right, we're going for it. I'm going to be in your face. I'm going to shoot. Either you're going to go down, and then if you don't go down, I came up, I was starting to swing on him, starting to land some big shots. I had a little elbow in there somewhere. And I think once he saw that there was like no fear and I was just going to be in his face, and he's like, man, this, you do that any other time, a guy's either going to be tired or they're going to be like kind of tentative. And once he saw that did nothing, I think that was very mentally defeating for him. And it was, not exactly how I drew it up, but I kind of figured I'd have to wear on him first.
And you mentioned earlier, talking about how how it felt in the cage. You don't know how people looked at it sort of on TV. So how did it feel in the cage? Like in terms of it being a bit of a come from behind win, you obviously faced some level of adversity. How did it feel in the cage? Like what was your immediately after the fight? Like what's your assessment of, yeah, this was a big comeback, or yeah, I was doing well all like, how did you feel about it in the moment?
I mean, I was pretty aware of what it looked like. I know in the first round, it was like, okay, I probably lost the first round. It's like kind of feeling him out, trying to get his timing, because he was very good at being patient, very good distance control. He pressed forward a little bit more than I thought he would. He had really good footwork. And after that, I was like, okay, I got to, I figured this would happen a little bit like this. I thought maybe I'd have a few more openings on the feet, but, he's a really good striker. And then the second round, I was like, okay, now we're going to turn up the heat a little bit with the takedowns. Even if I don't get a takedown, I'm going to shoot. And like that'll create openings somewhere. But after the body shot and he started going to work, like I said, when I was underneath there, I was like, oh, this is great. He's going to get tired. And I could feel like when I popped up, I was like, all right, let's go. And I was like fresh and in his face again. And I feel like when I watched it back, that's how it looked too. It didn't just look like I got beat up on and then just shot a desperation takedown. I was like, I got up and I was shooting, but I was shooting and being aggressive in a way where it's like, no, I'm going to be the winner. I'm aggressive. I'm being in this fight. I'm not shooting out of fear. I'm shooting to put fear into you. And I think it translated really well. And that's why, the comeback thing isn't inaccurate. You know what I'm saying? And I think it kind of means more that like, look at this guy, like looked like he was going to get finished. And again, the body shot did really hurt, and the ground and pound looked bad. And I knew it looked bad, you know what I'm saying? But everybody could tell when I popped up, I was like, I'm in it to win it. And I was like coming after him. And I think, you don't really get too many Rocky movie stories like that, where you see a guy get beat up and then he gets up and he's fresh and he's like, let's go. So I think everybody was really pumped up about that.
Yeah, and especially like for someone like you who's been in the UFC for a long time at this point, people know who you are. Generally, people like you. You're a likable guy. So I think they kind of that's why the reception was the way it was. But the question is like, how do you keep doing this? Because this wasn't the first time. Like as we said earlier, there have been some tough fights where you end up getting that submission, and it probably is a submission because almost all of your wins in the UFC are submissions, which is really cool. But what do you credit it to? Like, is it just toughness? Is it something else? How do you keep getting these tough wins ultimately?
I mean, part of it's my general physical resilience. Like, I can take a licking and keep on ticking. And I think part of it's toughness. And I think probably the two biggest factors, one being that like anytime I've ever trained MMA, I've always trained with the idea that like, the only way to win a fight is to finish somebody. Either you got to put them to sleep by punching them, or you got to break something, or you got to choke them, knock them out or choke them unconscious. And I think, I don't know, maybe that has led me to make certain decisions in fights that are like not the best decision. But my whole thing is like, a fight is a fight to the finish, not a fight to go to the judges. And I just like, I was talking to somebody before about this, but like, I'm not like the most athletic. I'm not the strongest guy. I'm not the fastest guy. I don't have crazy knockout power. So my way to win was always like, I'm going to be in your face. And like, if something lands, that's cool. But I know like I'm going to try and beat you up, and then choking somebody usually is a way to, like, I know for sure that the fight's over. Doesn't matter, like the points don't matter. Doesn't matter who looks better or who's faster, any of that other stuff. I know that there's a way that, like, no matter whatever happens, that makes me the winner, and there's nothing anybody can say or do about it. And I think that approach really helps. And then another thing is just, trying to be in a good headspace when you're in competition, like, not, you take the work and the process very, very seriously, and you stay disciplined in the training. But then when you get into the competition, it just, I don't take that too seriously. If you want to compete well, for most people, you got to, like, you want to win, but don't think that you have to win. Like, tomorrow's a new day. I've had losses before, but when you go in there, as long as I know, like I've said before, as long as I'm drawing breath, I know I can win a fight no matter what's happening. But, don't take anything too seriously. Just go in there, have fun, because that's the point. And as long as you don't stop fighting, there's always a way you can win.
You talking about how you kind of just find a way no matter what. It sounds like the champ in your division, Dricus du Plessis.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah, no, we've had, people have asked me about that, and, like, looking at it now, I can see it, like, comparing the two styles. Like, obviously he's more of a stand-up guy, but, like, fighting. And I said this before when someone asked me about, like, his fighting style specifically, was like, look, it doesn't have to look like you think it needs to look. You know what I mean? Is it effective or is it not effective?
Mm-hmm.
And it's another great example of someone who's like, if you just keep fighting and it keeps working, or, like, even no matter if you get hit, if you hit them back, like, you always got a chance to win. So, and that's, I think, people really appreciate about the comeback and me getting a comeback is, I always say this, like, there are things about me that aren't normal. Like, because there's some people where you see them and they're like a physical specimen, and it's like, that's not a normal human being. I'm just a normal guy with not normal, like, discipline and work ethic. So it's like, you can do this. You just have to decide that you want to do this and be this tough. It's going to be hard to get there, and it's not going to happen overnight. But, I think people like that about me, is like they see themselves in me a lot. And it's like, man, hell, like, I can do that too, or whatever you're going through. As long as you put in the effort, you can get something out of it.
Speaking of DDP, what did you think of his win over Izzy just a week and a half ago?
I was one of the very few people to pick him in that fight. I figured it would kind of go something like that. But the thing is that, like I said it before, when you get a guy that fights throwing a lot of circular strikes and counter striking against a guy that, like, just goes forward and doesn't stop going forward and is that physically big, it's really hard to pick against the guy that goes forward. I said, like, if Adesanya can keep him on the outside, like you did with Costa, who's, like, kind of similar, but Costa, again, he'll go forward and then stop to throw some big bombs. DDP goes forward and then he goes forward some more. So I did see Alex Bahia point out that, like, he thought maybe Izzy was injured because he wasn't throwing as many leg kicks, which would definitely, make it harder for him to maintain that distance that he wants. But, when it's all said and done, like, again, the guy goes forward on everybody. He lands big punches. And on top of the big punches, he can still, like, probably basically uses, like, rugby takedowns to, like, take you to the ground. And when you're that big and you get on top of somebody, especially like Adesanya, who's, like, not traditionally a grappler, that's really hard to deal with. And even if he would have got up, that would have really taxed his energy system. So, that's kind of how I saw the fight playing out.
Yeah. So I guess in a broader look at things and look at your career right now, first winning streak in a little while, you got some momentum behind you again. Of course, the big win over the weekend, 50K bonus, which is nice. What's like, where do you go from here? What is sort of the plan? Are there goals you have in mind? I guess, I mean, we could agree that you had more fights than you'll have, in the future before retirement. You're towards the end, but certainly not at the end.
Right.
And I don't even know if you're thinking about the end at this point, but what do you want to do? What's next? And yeah.
So that I had this call out in the cage, and I've been saying it ever since. My thing was, I want to fight December 14th in Tampa against Paul Craig. I think that's a great fight. I've had teammates suggest it. I've had seen people throw it around on the internet. I think no matter what happens in that fight, it's going to be fun for the fans. He's another tough guy that's been ranked before at 2 different weight classes. He's fought champions before. Either no one goes to the ground and we just slug it out, or it's going to be some really fun scrambles on the mat. And I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Yep. So that's what you want next. So, I mean, I guess looking at it a little, not to go too far into the future, but is the goal at this stage in your career still to, be ranked, get in that top 10, maybe, even go further than that? Like, what do you want out of your pro MMA career before this is all said and done?
Yeah, I mean, the end goal for anybody is to get that 12 pounds of gold wrapped around your waist. And no matter how anybody feels about that, about me saying that and wanting that for myself, there's guys every day, like a lot of guys get ranked when they're 38, 39, 40 and get belts when they're, in their mid to late 30s. So it's not outside the realm of possibility. Obviously, I got a lot of work to do before that happens. There's a lot of guys in front of me, and like the middleweight division's a little more in the mix now with different guys coming up. So I think I get that fight in December and I get a win. I think then for sure I get to fight somebody who's ranked, and then we kind of go from there.
Are there any specific, just because you broke Anderson Silva's record this past weekend, like, are there any other records that you can think of or know of that you are kind of chasing now? Or like most submissions would be the obvious one to me. Of course, it's still 4 or 5 away, but that's not impossible. It's far from impossible. Like, are there any goals, actual like records that you want to break?
Honestly, I don't even think about any of that stuff.
No?
And,
Okay.
I'm aware now that like before, when I set the middleweight record, I looked, I was like, well, who's got the most? And Oliveira's got like 16. I was like, oh man, that's gonna be that's gonna be hard to beat. But now I'm like, man, only one more ties you for second, and after that, it's only 4 more to tie number 1. So that's, I got definitely more than that many fights left in me. So it's not outside the realm of possibility.
All right. Well, I think the last thing I want to end on is completely irrelevant to you specifically, but 12 to 6 elbows are joining the unified rules of mixed martial arts in November. UFC Edmonton, November 2nd is the first event they'll be in play. I think long overdue is what most people feel. How do you feel about 12 to 6 elbows in general, and then finally being legalized?
Yeah, I think that was a dumb rule. And I again, it's what target are you hitting? If you hit the correct target, that's not any more powerful than any other elbow. They're also changing the definition of a grounded opponent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd have to go look at the email again, but I believe it's changing from just feet to feet and hands. So technically, even if you're in like a 4-point stance, like 2 hands and 2 feet, you're not considered grounded anymore.
Right.
It's got to be something other than the hands or the feet, even if the hands are weight bearing. So that'll kind of take away a lot of the gray area, because like if your hands go down, you're still up. It's like you either got to put a knee down or just go, go down, or at least get a knee to the floor. And if you get a knee to the floor, chances are your butt's going down, your head's going up. So that should avoid a lot of the like weird, like, I threw a knee and he was still up when I threw it, but then he went down to play the, should eliminate a lot of playing the game. So that's I think that's a good rule too to have.
And the grounded rule that benefits someone like you, like someone like a grappler who's going for takedowns, and because your opponent, now could put one hand down and maybe you don't see it or whatever. Not that that's really ever been an issue.
Right.
It's generally beneficial, won't it be?
Yeah, for sure. So now it's like, you get to that like 4-point stance, you can't just hang out there, because a guy could quite literally just step around and punch you in the face. So, and it's like, hey man, you either going to really fight to get up and you're going to get out, or you're going to get taken down, or you just take yourself down, depending on what you think the best course of action is for you in that position.
All right, Gerald, I've taken up more than enough of your time. I appreciate it as always. And congratulations on the big win over the weekend.
Hey, thanks again, Nick. Appreciate you.
All right.